Hello, fellow Lolsters. Welcome to the next episode of LOL Love of Literature. And today we have with us Miss Lovelace Cook. Being a podcaster herself, she's also becoming an author very soon. And I'd like for Miss Jayanti to give a formal introduction of Miss Lovelace. Welcome, Miss
Oh,
Lovelace.
thank you.
Yes. Lovelace Cook is a storyteller, writer, podcaster, and an audiobook narrator. That's very interesting. I must talk with her more on that. She worked in New York, is it NYC, for magazine publishing and television. And she worked on feature films in Los Angeles while attending film production and screenwriting classes in UCLA and the American Film Institute. She traveled through and lived in India. Oh, how long? We must ask her. Southeast Asia and the UK from 2013 to 2016. 3 years, that's good. The books, authors, and films she discovered influenced podcast Bollywood and Books, and her misadventures on the road, traveling like a 20-year-old on a gap year, inspired her novel Meet Me in Mumbai. Very interesting, actually. She's a, if I, am I right to say that you're also a, what is that? Weather forecast. Is that
Oh,
disaster? Yes,
I'm a
disaster.
disaster worker. I'm what's called a
Ah,
public information officer for the government.
yes. Do
So
you still
disaster.
work or you used to work?
I will once my health is recovered. I
Okay, I
have,
understand. That's right. Oh,
that.
welcome to LOL. Very
Oh,
good to have you. We are excited. We've been thinking of what to ask LOL, Lovelace and all that. So over to Danya for the first question. We believe in the first question.
So, Miss Lovelace, how has it been transitioning from, being into the industry of publishing and filming to podcast? And why podcast?
I in the publishing, I was on the business side of publishing, sales promotion, and in the film industry doing script revisions on feature films and studying feature films. But during the pandemic, I decided I had been influenced by another podcaster, Joanna Penn, Penn, who is just terrific. And I when I was out on an assignment, a disaster assignment, I was driving a lot and I listened to her and I thought, you know what? I mean, I'm working on this book and I need a podcast. I need to be able to at least start to attract some attention before the book is finished. So I learned how to do audio recording and editing during the pandemic. And then that's how the podcast, once I learned how to do the audio recording and editing, then I could launch my podcast. I knew what I wanted to do. A little background. Would you like a little
Yes,
background
please. Yes, please. Yes, of
on
course.
the podcast? It is the idea for the podcast, Bollywood and Books, came from my travels and discovering books, having time to read in India, which I did just, it's difficult sometimes to find the time. It's a luxury to be able to sit down and read a book uninterrupted or to be on a train. And so I found that in India, I had time to read. And after traveling, was it the first time? Maybe it was this, I've lost track of time. I wanted to do a presentation at my library, and I did in 2018, which I called A Literary Journey Through India. And it really, I started with E.M. Forster's book, A Passage to India, and kind of went through 100 years of literature that reflected on from colonialism to Gandhi, to freedom, to just all of the transitions, like Arundhati Roy, which is the God of Small Things, which I read when someone gave it to me in Kerala, in Varkala, actually.
Varkala.
And I started thinking about, just actually to Aravind Adiga, when I read White Tiger, which I loved. And then his most recent book is, I think, Amnesty, which actually ties back into Ian Forster's book with the character. So that was the presentation I gave at the library, covered a whole lot of territory, but in a limited way, in a sense, and just an arc from Ian Forster to Aravind Adiga. And I thought, well, okay, to get to the title of my podcast, I thought a literary journey through India is just not going to hack it, Bollywood and Books is going to get attention, and it's short and it's sweet. And
for youngsters, it is India is Bollywood. Bollywood is India. Synonymous, right? You're right. Very clever.
I have not been, and I thought, it's a literary romp through India where, meet me at the corner of patchouli and chai, where I just started my intro is like, meet me at the corner of patchouli and chai. So,
do you watch Bollywood films? That is just a casual question. The other one I wanted to ask was the audiobook. How did the interest come and how did you begin? Could you share with us? Because that's going to help many of the aspirants.
Yes. First of all, I think that the number of people who listen to audiobooks worldwide is huge. And I think people are listening more and more. But I decided, because people were enjoying listening to my recorded voice, and people in my podcast groups, and just the cohorts who are involved in podcasting would say, "Well, you ought to be narrating. I could listen to you all day. I could, you ought to narrate an audiobook." I thought, well, okay, why not? Maybe I can develop an income stream. So I had an opportunity to record a book which is called Such a Woman, The Life of Madame Octavia Walton Levert. She was in the 1800s. She was living in the 1800s. And I don't know if this is too long a story, but she supported the Union during the Civil War. And in our country, the Civil War between the North and the South, she lived in Mobile, Alabama, which is across the bay from where I live. And she was quite a gregarious person. So basically what I did was narrate the book, which had been written by a researcher at the University of South Alabama. It was pretty heavy researched, heavy with research. It was not really narrative nonfiction. It was essentially a biography with a whole lot of research. So, I had to explain to the publisher, because it was his first. He publishes a lot of small authors around here, but he didn't understand that I couldn't just flip the pages of a book and read and record, because with a mic, you've got to have, anybody who's a musician knows, if you're recording, you have to have certain, you don't want the extraneous noises. You don't want someone's lawnmower or dog barking or the taxi, the
soundproof environment. Yeah.
More or less soundproofing. But it was difficult. It was a difficult project because there were a lot of quotes from from books and newspapers in the 1800s. And our writing style has evolved. I'm sure the same because if I watch early Indian cinema,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
style has changed so much to the
What it is
just
today. Yeah.
exactly because of the language, the use of language, and
Yeah.
so recording it's hard work.
Yes.
And I did actually talk with someone yesterday at lunch after we have a monthly writers meeting here in town, and went to lunch, and they were talking with me about recording one of his books. So
So
you know,
I know what you mean, like you have to have a quiet environment, any extra noise. And how did you do it? Did you do in a studio, recording studio, or at home? How did they clean the audio? Did they do that? And is this book there for listeners?
good question. Yes, to a lot of the things. First of all, am recording at home. I have more or less a home studio,
Okay.
which I kind of close it off
Okay.
because of the recording equipment I have, and also some plugins. This is more technical, but I can keep the sound at bay, basically.
Okay.
I have a rug on the floor. I have, draw the curtains so that there are a lot of sound absorbing things in my room. And also the microphone makes a difference. It's not picking up a whole lot of extraneous noise. One of the tips that I had, was I had to get an iPad because to scroll, I mean, when I'm reading, I can't flip the pages of a book, scroll and read, and you're not doing it. And I think that a lot of people use an iPad in a studio. One thing that I would see, I mean, you can record in a closet, and people make, pillow forts. I mean, just where you've got under a blanket and with pillows, anywhere that, that would get hot really quickly. So I don't think you could, with the time it takes to record an audio book, that wouldn't. I think, but that particular book is out on Audible, and the book is available also, that you can listen to a 5-minute clip of the book. So that's, I want to narrate my own book, and I want to narrate others' books, because I see that for me as an income stream, down the road. Right now, I'm still in the early days, so I can't charge what people charge. But
I know.
in terms of getting rid of any background things, I did a lot of editing, a lot myself, just to try to clean it up, and to clean it up so that the author could listen to it. I wanted her to listen to every single chapter of the book. When you record an audiobook, this is probably too much information, but you record by chapters, and you're putting it on Amazon or Audible. You record one chapter at a time, and that's how you upload it to Audible. But I wanted for her to double check it. She was not as kind of, I guess, as much of a perfectionist as I am, which is a flaw. But I wanted to make sure every single word was there, or if she'd made mistakes in the manuscript, which there were a lot of. She had an editor who didn't edit the book, and they were very well, and so there were a lot of mistakes. And that can throw you when you're reading.
Yes, it can be speed breakers. I understand.
It stops you completely when you're narrating. And
so you have to, do you read once and mark with pencil so that when you actually record, it's better? Do you do that?
I marked on the actual manuscript on the iPad, where
sure.
beforehand I read. I went back and read before I recorded each chapter because I knew I might come across a sentence where the author had used two different names for someone. I mean, the first and last just spelled it differently, and things, really small things like that. And I realized, she needed someone else to really proof this to ensure its accuracy.
That's right.
But in term, I did actually, at the end of the day, I got to the point where I'd worked on it so long and so hard. I thought, you know what, I'm over this. I've had enough of this. And the problems with this particular book, I learned a hard lesson. But I actually I did, at the very end, I sent it to someone on Fiverr to just clean up the last things and get it ready for Audible, mainly because I didn't want to take any more time. I needed to get back to my own writing, and I'd taken time on the book. But there are people who can help you out there, can do the whole thing. I mean, they can take manuscript and
so how do you see the future of print books and audiobooks, which is going to overtake the other? What in your perspective, can you share with us, because you have your experience?
First of all, I really hope and pray that people continue to buy books, print. I like books that I can hold, in my hand. So I'm hoping the sales have been going up and down, because I look at, from Publishers Weekly, how things are going. And I think sales in other countries may be better sometimes than in the US, especially sales of books went up during the pandemic because people were at home. They were reading more. Now I think that we're seeing, because of the cost of printing, the cost of paper, the cost of printing, just finding paper, it's getting more expensive.
Because world is getting more environment conscious, right? They want to save on the trees, the raw material for the paper, right?
Well, that's one part of it. The other is that a scarcity, in the supply chain. Like, I think I think that's global. I don't think it's just where you can't find things on the grocery shelf because it's not in stock, or you can't get a part for a computer or a part for a car.
Understood. So because you've been on the marketing side of the publishing industry, has it helped you write a book or which is based on the trends of the market? Like, did you understand the pulse of like what the readers would like to read, and did you write a book? Like, because I know yours is still it's not published yet, and it is the manuscript is but ready though. I mean, has it helped you in polishing the manuscript, making it more
saleable,
aligned to the trends? Yeah.
First of all, thanks. A wonderful question. No, I am not following the market or the trends. I'm writing what I want to write. And I think everyone, excuse me, 1 minute. I think if we're true to ourselves, this is personal opinion. I think if we're true to ourselves, we're not trying to emulate what's going on in the market.
Yeah, we believe that too. It was a question to prompting you to express yourself. So
exactly.
Yeah, otherwise we know how authors think. Of course, we write for our joy. First, it should impress us. It should make us happy. Then it's going to make the readers happy. Sellability is totally another thing.
I think that we, in a sense, have a responsibility to, maybe it's one person out there who needs to read that book.
Yes.
My book is not for everyone. I know it's not.
It
And I
is.
can tell by some of the beta readers I had, it was like, why are you talking about a squat toilet in India? And I thought, because I hadn't experienced it like that on a train. So, there were things.
Did you get an Indian beta reader? Did an Indian read?
I have, what I've asked two people, one Indian American author, and also Surabhi Kaushik,
Okay.
to read, because I wanted to make sure I was culturally sensitive.
Okay.
I did not want, because of my ignorance.
So what did they say about your writing?
Well, first of all, it should have been ready in July, but because of health issues, things just got. I'm going to, I hope, have an ARC, an advanced reading copy, ready in early January to give to some people. I'm going to a conference, and I hope to send it. Veena Rao, who wrote Purple Lotus, is one of the people I asked to, and she's got a newspaper, NRI Pulse. It's part of the Indian community in Atlanta. So I asked Veena and also Surabhi to read it for cultural sensitivity.
They have read it?
Not yet, but they are going to.
Okay.
Okay. So because you started a podcast before you started writing the book, has the podcast helped you in improving your writing, or like given you tips to like how to approach a particular subject? Like the insights of an author, have they helped you make the book more attractive to publishers? What are your takeaways from the podcast, because they're about books and Bollywood?
And I think on that one, I developed the podcast as a marketing tool, actually, to gain an audience of people who might turn into readers if they liked what they heard, my interviews, or read the blog on my website. I hoped that would be. This is kind of how I see it, Andanya, and it's, I wanted to establish myself as a brand. And if I have a wheel and there's spokes coming out from the center, I wanted to be the brand, with the podcast as one part of the brand, and just the book as another, because there are other things I want to write. I think about things in the business sense, but coming from the business side of publishing, because I was in magazine publishing. So I look at what can I do, and I don't use all the social media. A lot of the people, my audience, a lot of my audience is on Facebook. Some are using Instagram. So that's, I've transitioned. Sorry, I'm going off on a little tangent there. I don't know that the podcast itself has improved my writing.
Okay.
But it has certainly. I started watching, just Netflix thinks that I'm in India, I think, because they're just, all the Indian movies come up because I watch Indian cinema. I've watched RRR 3 times. I love it.
Okay. Shah Rukh Khan fan, is it?
It's
RRR.
no,
RRR is not. Okay.
I'm Southern
RRR is a Telugu movie. Yeah.
Telugu, yeah, I know.
Gosh, it's fantastic. It's the actors. It's extraordinary. It's everything you want in a film, between dance and action and fantasy.
Entertainment, right?
And absolutely. And I'm trying to think that it's
Bahubali, is it? Did you watch Bahubali?
I did. Oh my gosh, I loved that. I watched it a couple of times. Lately, I've been watching some of the cinema. I mean, I do enjoy Shah Rukh Khan. One of my friends, or she's Kathy Murphy, who is the Pulpwood Queen, adores Shah Rukh Khan. She wants to meet Shah Rukh Khan. I think he's a brilliant actor and a wonderful person, and I like his productions. I like Amir Khan.
I like Amir Khan.
I like his films too. I think that there's kind of more of a moral tendency. There's something there that it's at the center of his production that I feel maybe now in a lot of cinema that I'm watching isn't there. That a lot of Indian cinema is emulating Western. You know, it's gotten to the point where we have car chases in India. You know, we have all the guns. We're shooting each other. It's the Indian mafia, and oh my God, I mean, I love watching all this action adventure stuff, which may seem a little strange, but it's not. It doesn't have the same heart as some of the Indian cinema. The older I enjoy.
Absolutely. So, my next question is, as you said, because you've been into the marketing side of the magazine publishing, and so writing, or like let's say reading, was very common for you. You have been there, like you've read a lot of things, and I'm sure. So have you been in a phase where when you were writing, you read a part and you thought, no, this might not work for my book, and you completely discarded it, but you have regretted it and you just brought it back in? Is there like times when you were back and forth and like, let me add it, let me not add it, let me do it, let me not do it? Have you had that?
The editing is the hardest part of the book. And it was long. And so there are things that I'm now, because I had this interruption of health issues, which is a problem, it gave me a little space. And so I'm cutting a lot. You know, people say that the book really starts to take shape. Your manuscript becomes a book when you edit. The first draft, I'm learning now not to be a perfectionist and not to try to edit when I write. But because I wrote for business, I had to write really lean copy. So I got to the point where I was editing things all the time, and you get stuck. You can work on chapter 1 for months, weeks, years. So I decided, go ahead. I have actually spent years working on this because it came from actual travel. But I am now trying to cut it back a good bit, just to try to make every word count. I'm not. One thing that I've learned through a course called Story Grid, I don't know, Sean Coyne and Tim Grahl, I learned about looking at what's called essentially in each scene, and a scene is not necessarily a chapter, but to look for, okay, what are 5 key elements? And from an inciting incident, what's happening here, to essentially just complications, progressive complications, where your character has to face something and then face essentially a crisis. They have to come to a point where, what's the decision they're going to make to move to the next step, and then to come to a climax of, they've made this decision, now they're going to have to live with it, and then they get to a resolution. So ideally, I've tried to do that where it's not like a cliffhanger, but it provides continuity in it, and to make sure that the story arc that I'm working on there is an arc, that there is a story. But editing can be really hard. I'm right now doing what I would call line edits rather than a huge developmental edit. I'm looking at each sentence and a paragraph and saying, can I make this leaner? and I cut this back. It was
Lo-
all
Love, I'm
connected.
sorry to interrupt, Lovelace. I think you should do the content editing first before you go to the line editing.
Oh,
Because if you're
absolutely.
going to spend all your time in line editing, later on you're going to touch your content, you're going to remove chunks. You will again have to see the continuity and things. What you should
No,
do is
just
the
to,
content
yeah,
first.
that's been really clear because my book is in 4 parts. It takes place in different places. Um, Also, I use a certain technique that I learned in the film industry to to help me write, to help me keep on track with what's happening in this scene and this scene and this scene in this part. Um, I to It might be just to write a sentence about it. When you're writing a screenplay or when I'm writing out the beats for a screenplay, I will on one side of a page write, okay, this happened here, and then on the other I'll start writing and just write. So it's not, but to try to follow some continuity. And you're absolutely right. No, I don't do line edits. I have not been doing line editing until now, which is getting ready for publication, looking at where's the fat, where can I get rid of some of this, just make it leaner so that it's not so wordy. I don't, I want to leave in the words that people want to read. I can't remember who said that.
Is your work ready for screen? Have you thought of that?
Actually, yes, I was in a writing class in 2017 with a group in London called the Curtis Brown Creative Group. And when I talked about the book, there was people all over the world were taking the course, and there was someone in LA who said, you're gonna pitch the movie before you ever finish the book.
Yeah.
Because it does lend itself, it's to visual. And that's I used to be a newspaper photographer, and when I write, I try to capture picture essentially the picture, and bring someone to India, and or to Cornwall, which is another area that the book takes place in. So just I lost my train of thought right there, but
No, screen for the screen. Are you pitching for the screen? I asked.
I haven't, but it would be. I'm trying to get. I'm going to be talking at a conference in January,
Okay.
and there's a producer director who's going to be there talking too. So I want to have my book. I mean, I want to have an advanced reading copy ready, so I can just say, yeah, this is my book. So this is actually a promo postcard that I asked.
Wow,
Had this
lovely.
Yes, this young man in Estonia, a 17-year-old
Mm.
school student designer who signed a promo postcard for me. And it actually
Meet Me, Meet Me in Mumbai can be a Bollywood movie also it becomes, or it can be a Hollywood movie also. Yeah, I'm already thinking, yes, we are going to watch this in Netflix.
there's a wonderful, well, it because most of it centers around travel in India and some of the hardships of someone who's 63 traveling like she's 20 years old, which is a real a challenge. And that's what actually um, formed the whole point of the story. I wanted to encourage people who were my age to not, and you're so young, Danya, you're not there. You probably don't know what I'm talking about. But I wanted to encourage people to just get out of their comfort zones. When you're coming to retirement in life, it's not the end. it's just another chapter. It's just another opportunity for growth. What can you do? You don't have to go and stay in a treehouse on the beach in India with no running water. You don't have to do that to go get out of your comfort zone. I did, but I lasted 8 days in the treehouse, which was really kind of crude. And there were palm fronds roofed and rats running around and a single. It was pretty horrible. Eight days in the treehouse was sufficient. I described that. I just wanted to encourage people to just get out of a rut. That's really started the whole process, where I said back in 2011, I think it was, said, you know what, my life is boring. What has happened? I used to be an adventurous person. I used to travel. I used to do all these things. Where have I gone? I thought, okay, so my birthday's coming up. My birthday wish is like, I'm going to ask the universe to help me get out of this rut. Well, it's really important to be specific when you ask the universe to hand you something. So, I'll know later on. So what the universe brought me was an opportunity to travel in India, and that was part one of the book, which is in it. I'm trying to kind of create like there's stories within this story. It's not a short story, but you could almost take each part of the 4 parts and create a novella or something. So you were asking about editing, about the story, and that's I wanted. There's a young man in Delhi, New Delhi, Vishash Assad, whom I've interviewed, and he is just really cool. I didn't realize when I interviewed him that his dad had been a director in Bollywood in Mumbai, like for years, 30 years. Oh. So he teaches. He's a photographer. He's a visual artist. He's a dancer. He thought he was going to be a Bollywood dancer. So I thought, oh gosh, I would love to have him come and consult, because he's got all these wonderful, wonderful, talented students from a fashion institute in Delhi who are dancing and just designing clothes and doing all these incredible things. So would I love to have this filmed and take place in India and in England, which is one part of it, and also back in India, and in Southeast Asia, which is the 4th part of the book. So
where exactly is in Southeast Asia? Where is it? Where exactly?
It starts out in Thailand, goes to Cambodia, and then Vietnam, and back to Thailand.
Okay, so you missed Singapore.
I missed Singapore, and I need to go to Singapore. I thought there are places to have tea in the world. There are wonderful hotels where you really want to have tea. Later on, I actually lived in Bangkok in 2016 for 6 months, and I went to Myanmar, to Bagan. So that's if I ever write the 5th part of the story, which is really totally the end of it, that will be part of this, the journey, the solo journey. But I was not traveling alone when I was in India. I was traveling with an Englishman who, we call it cheap in the US. People in England call it mean. Somebody who didn't want to spend any money traveling, wanted to travel as inexpensively as possible. So instead of staying in a hotel overnight before you travel, like from New Delhi to McLeod-Ganj, you get on an overnight bus and travel in the middle of the night. But lots of times, or a train, 3rd class sleeper, which ended up on the top berth of this 3rd class sleeper, which is I'm baking at 350 degrees. There's no fan up there. So, I am climbing up the ladder to get up to the third.
You wanted adventure, you
I
had
wanted- had it. Things would happen on the train where even the second time to India, I insisted actually when I wanted to travel from Trivandrum to Calcutta, not understanding on a train that 54 hours on a train is a long, long journey. And I was like the oddity, I would get off the train in certain towns and people would just stare at me. And there was we were in a 2 AC train. So there was air conditioning on this particular train. There were also blankets that had bed bugs. So I'm allergic to bed bugs. I didn't know that. So I looked like I had leprosy and ended up having to go to a hospital in Varanasi, where the monkeys are all over the place. There are really a lot of monkeys. On the Ganges. I did not intend to go to a hospital in India, but it was an amazing experience. The cost to see a dermatologist, they had to wait until a woman doctor came. I had to wait. So people were wonderful. But traveling on the train, people would there was a curtain between it that was kind of falling apart. It had a little bit of Velcro and it had some safety pins kind of holding it closed. But these children would come and open, they wanted to look. They were so curious. They wanted pictures. People wanted photos when I was trying to brush my teeth in between the train cars. I thought, no, this is just wonderful. I didn't write about all of that, but funny things like that happened that I thought were extraordinary. And you want a picture with me? That's okay, no problem. It was just kind of fun. Things have changed though since I traveled, since I started writing the book. There have been a lot of cultural shifts in India, I think. A lot of things that certainly that's reflected in cinema, in television and cinema, and Indian cinema. There's much, I just remember we were told, you can't kiss in public, you can't hold hands. But now I'm watching, I know this is a digression, now I'm watching cinema where, people are living together and their parents are even encouraging them to live together rather than go through the traditional, arranged marriage. So I'm just watching this cultural shift that's just, it seems like it was happening in a rapid pace. I don't know.
Social media is accelerating all that.
But it's been interesting.
Yeah, I think we can go to the next segment of this session, which is called the World of W's. World of W's is nothing but what, why, when, like the W questions, and it would be more like a rapid fire round. If the listeners could not sit through the entire session, they could just scroll down here and get the gist of what we've spoken till now. Yeah. So my first question for you on this segment would be, what were the most used apps when you were recording or editing your podcast? The applications, like the softwares.
The software, I use, I'm trying to, Hindenburg. Just first of all, I started using Audacity. That I tried GarageBand and I thought, because I use a Mac, I didn't really want to use GarageBand, and then I used Audacity, but it's got a lot there, and there's a lot you can do with it. But I found that Hindenburg was a much more user-friendly software. I know people use, what Adobe, there's the Adobe people are using a lot of other softwares, but I found Hindenburg worked pretty well. I also I did not go with my podcast host is Captivate. There's been a tremendous amount of the development with the podcast hosts that I've seen have been phenomenal. I mean, the features that my podcast host are offering now is just extraordinary. I mean, I'm not even using all of the features that I can use. There's another program that I use called Descript. It's Descript, but Descript, and I use that. I've been using that for upload the recording and print out the whole pod, the transcript. Then I can go through that, and Descript allows you to edit as well, to delete words. So if you delete the word that's on the screen, it's deleting the audio. So you can get rid of the ums and ahs.
It gives you the transcription automatically. It gives you.
It does. It does.
How does it recognize the differentiate the accents and?
That is a problem, because it is not, the AI is not sophisticated enough now at this point to recognize. When I have interviewed Indian authors, I know I have to go back and change some things, because it's not. I think that over time that won't be an issue, but because I can see that the level of sophistication with artificial intelligence is
so
really.
How has social media helped you promote your podcast, your blog?
Well, for one thing, when I put a link up, people go to it. And actually, 20% of, I don't have a huge audience, but 20% of my listeners are in India. 10% are in
Mumbai, Bollywood and Books. That's what.
No, I don't know if they listen more than once, but it's interesting to me that I have readers, listeners in India.
Because of your Bollywood and Books, the title, Bollywood and Books.
Which I think is wonderful, because I really hope there is an audience for my book. Someone in India may want to read.
Definitely, they will want to read.
Absolutely. So because it says Bollywood and Books, do you interview, directors and art photographers and everyone who's related to the film industry and the people behind books? Is that how it runs?
First of all, I would love to interview some actors and directors. And I know that right now, I don't know if you're familiar with Alka Joshi, who has written
we know
Artist, and the
henna artist.
Yes, and I interviewed Alka. Her third book is coming out, I think, this spring in March. Netflix is creating, I guess, a series based on an artist.
Perfume in Paris, right?
And the Perfume in Paris that's her third book. But there's a director, Sri Rao, Srirao, and he wrote a wonderful book called The Bollywood Kitchen before he started directing. I would love to interview him about the book, The Bollywood Kitchen, because they're recipes to go along with films. It's a really clever book, but I have had trouble finding. I want to find him now. Finding him or reaching, part of my job was how do you find someone? How do you get to this person? What's the level? How many gatekeepers are there going to be for me to do that? I felt like getting Alka Joshi. I started trying to build some credibility with talking with people, so that there's a legitimacy, I guess. Does that answer the question?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So when is this book expected to reach the readers, your book?
I'm hoping late January. I mean, the real, or early, or even close to Valentine's Day. But
Oh, okay.
so
So
because
we're almost there.
it's
Okay.
a kind of a love story, but it's not an happily ever after. I don't want to spill the beans, but I don't think every love story has to be a happily ever after.
Of course, of course.
We we
Most
don't
of the love
no
stories are not happily ever after. Most of them.
exactly. We don't yeah, we don't think any love story is happily ever after. I think it's just that they stop it there. No one goes beyond the happily ever after. I feel like they just don't go exploring beyond that stage. That's all.
No, I think you're right. I think that this, I think you're right. I think, first of all, relationships are the most baffling thing on earth. Trying to, you've got two different people with two different sets of baggage. And that is kind of the premise of this book, because
Okay.
the character Jesse, who is comes from a sophisticated background, New York, and traveling, dealing with fine restaurants, and the other character likes wild camping. He doesn't mind sleeping in a house on the beach with no running water, and and getting kind of scared to go to an outhouse that's in the sand, in the middle of the night. Those are things that, that's fine. He's happy doing that, but she's the clash of the opposites. I think fish out of water story.
Understood. So, when is your next audiobook due? Like, when are you releasing the next audiobook?
I don't know exactly. Like I said, I was talking with an author yesterday at lunch after we had a writers meeting here in town, and about a book that I'm going to send him a sample, let him listen to the sample, because I have to pitch it. I would like to actually, as I do my publish, I'm going to self-publish my book. I just am at a point where I just am going to do it. And if anybody reads it, wonderful. If nobody reads it, that's okay. Actually, a lot of people who know me have expressed an interest in reading it.
Of course, yeah.
I hope that they're not completely offended.
No. I think you should
like
start pitching also for the screen as the book is out, because ideas can reach people, just ideas from the book, and they will say it's a coincidence later. Then it's better that you do it yourself, pitch it.
I agree.
Yeah. Yes. So I think we've come to the end of the session. So if you could let us know how you enjoyed this session, and if you could give a few parting words to aspiring authors and podcasters out there, it would be great. Thank you.
First of all, it's been wonderful to speak with you, Jay and Danya. I've really enjoyed, isn't it a miracle? Well, it is, that we're in so many different places, in India, in Singapore, in the US, to be able to communicate and talk and share our love of literature, our love of books, that we love reading. Reading has influenced our whole lives. It's been our ticket to it's taken us to so many wonderful places. So I love the fact, I love to read. So if you're writing, be a reader first. Read widely, read everything. That's one thing that I would definitely say. And just write. When you're writing, just if you don't just stare at the page, don't worry, just write something, even if it's garbage. Write, because you get into the routine. I want to share a book that was helpful for me. It's called The War of Art. And it's by a screenwriter, actually, Stephen Pressfield. He wrote the movie The Legend of Bagger Vance, which is actually based on now I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, the Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita?
Yes.
Bhagavad
In fact, the characters are based on Arjun, and I can't remember who else, but it's
Krishna.
Krishna. His books, his book or his film, The Legend of Bagger Vance, because he's so heavily influenced by India, by
Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, that that was the way that he developed that. The War of Art is about resistance.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's the thing that stymies us. We can, does that shelf need dusting? Doesn't the cat need feeding? Can I go bake a cake or make some soup or go get a paratha? Or, because we get distracted, and it's what he would call resistance. Because sit down in the chair and write. One program that has really helped me was, there is a marketing guru, Seth Godin. He has workshops called the Akimbo workshops, AKIMBO. That's how I learned how to. There's a new podcasting class coming up with the Akimbo workshops. If there are people who want to learn how to do a podcast, there are lots of I guess online magazines or things that you can subscribe to find out what's happening in the podcasting world. I want to encourage people, right? I think everyone has a story in them, and not to be afraid, just to do it. There's a little card that I have that I have to remind myself. It's don't be afraid to be seen trying. No, we need to not be afraid to put ourselves out there, and don't worry about what anyone else thinks. And that's a difficult place to be. But
Lovely message you have left.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that session. Memorable it's been, and wish you all the best. And I want to Meet You in Mumbai on screen. Netflix, I will watch.
I think that would be fantastic. I would love it. As long as I can travel in an air-conditioned car, or have some air conditioning, so I don't get so it's not quite so brutal with the heat. Thank you both so